Up now, we have Forum Daily's Energy Update with Dan McTeague of Canadians for Affordable Energy.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nima. And, I keep saying this, sounds like a broken record. Another week, another week of uncertainty and ambivalence by energy markets. They really don't know what to do. And so we have a scenario that plays out where almost every day this week, Nima, we've seen energy prices rise only to be followed the next day by a dramatic crash or a spectacular crash. You have to sort of wonder what's behind all this, but there's no doubt that jiggery pokery stuff coming from Iran suddenly deciding that it can send a lot of oil out of its markets. China fudging the numbers on its economic needs and its apparent slowdown despite the stimulus. And then, of course, you have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, in which the U.S. government is saying, "Hey, we took out 200 million barrels. We're going to buy back maybe 12." I note today, Nima, something very, very interesting because it is the start of hurricane season. We already have what looks like a disturbance, the very first of its kind, coming off the East African coast, or rather West African coast, making its way across the Atlantic basin. And of course, that then has the potential at some point between now and the end of September to create hurricanes in the Gulf Coast. Well, what does that do? We had a relatively quiet season last year. That's likely to potentially put in a situation where some of the refinery capacity and other infrastructure for oil and gas in the United States will be affected. That has to force markets to move away from artificial intelligence, the quants, the money managers, the short sellers, and start to feel that really start to deal with the real physical problem, and that is that we're experiencing a shortage of supply, while demand appears not to be that strong. Every second week from the Energy Information Agency, the Department of Energy of the U.S. government, shows that there is still very strong, significant upward momentum on demand. And so we're going to continue to see this sort of seesaw battle, this back and forth of one day up, one day down, until finally something will happen. And I don't know exactly what that is going to look like, Nima, but I can tell you that for Canadians, do expect and brace yourself for an increase on an average of 15 to 20 cents a litre this summer. Let's start with Vancouver, where we've seen prices, push up to 206, down to 199, back up to 201 tomorrow, likely going back up another 2 or 3 cents a litre. So back to 205, at least for the foreseeable 7 days. The rest of BC looking to remain in the $1.70 range, while Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, Saskatoon, so Alberta, Saskatchewan, and even Manitoba will remain pretty much where they are, range bound in Alberta's case between $1.38 and $1.42, in Saskatchewan's case between $1.52 and $1.58, and of course a little higher at $1.59 to $1.61 for Winnipeg and the rest of Manitoba. Ontario, it will see, of course, an increase, a net increase this week of about 2, maybe 3 cents a litre. So the $1.59.9 moving to $1.61, possibly $1.63 by the time the week's out, which of course means that in Quebec, Montreal, Quebec City, and everywhere between, prices there will look a whole lot closer to about $1.75 or $1.76 for a litre of gasoline. We also have to consider another factor, and that's Maritimes are coming very, very close to that point in which they're going to see a rather dramatic increase. Maybe not this week, but they will see an increase in fuel prices. So places like Nova Scotia, where you can buy gasoline for almost 10 cents cheaper than Ontario, hard to believe because the cost for them is much higher. Looks like even the regulatory authority in that province and others are going to have to consider the rather dramatic impact of the imposition of the federal carbon tax on those provinces. So in the case of Nova Scotia, they're looking at on come July 1st, a net increase of 15 cents a litre. That's for gasoline, 18.5 for diesel. Let's go to PEI. The increase will be 16.5 cents a litre because there is no carbon tax there at this point, and almost 20 cents, just a fraction of 1/10 of a cent under 20 cents a litre for diesel. Newfoundland up about 3.5, 4 cents a litre. And of course, that will mean that for diesel up about 4.6 cents a litre. So this is coming in 2 weeks. I'm mentioning it now because it's going to be all the rage in about a week and a half. But this is a part of the country that has not had quite the hit on carbon taxes. And we have to discuss the second carbon tax, which will mean in some cases, not just your electricity, but other products will continue to rise or begin to rise dramatically as refineries are required to either buy carbon credits and pass those on to consumers which will be 30 cents a liter by 2030, starting about 4 or 5 cents a liter this year. So, in the end, this is the start of the week of a very long week ahead in which prices are going to rise. And unfortunately, it won't have to do with markets, but a lot to do with your federal government. That's it for this week, Nima.
All right, well, as always, lots to watch for, Dan. Again, that was Dan McTeague with Canadians for Affordable Energy.